The debate over South Africa's so-called national dialogue shook Parliament once again. What was presented as a platform for unity and reconciliation was, in the eyes of many, little more than a misnomer. The truth, critics argued, is that the dialogue has not truly started. What took place was a gathering in name only, and the real national dialogue is still to be convened in the spirit of inclusivity, nation-building, and genuine representation of the South African people. Opposition voices rose sharply, questioning the credibility of the initiative. They pointed out that some of the country's most respected institutions and foundations had pulled out. The Thabo Mbeki Foundation, the Steve Biko Foundation, the Chief Albert Lutherly Foundation, the Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation, the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation, and the Strategic Dialogue Group were among those who withdrew. Their absence, critics said, undermined the legitimacy of the process. How, they asked, could government claim to bring the entire nation together when some of the most influential voices were not even in the room? President Cyril Ramaphosa responded carefully. He cautioned against reducing the dialogue to a contest over which groups withdrew and which stayed. The national dialogue, he insisted, was not his dialogue, nor the ANC's dialogue. It was, in fact, a process that the people of South Africa themselves had called for. The Constitution, he reminded Parliament, places the responsibility of nation-building at the feet of the President, which is why the first meeting had been convened under his leadership. But beyond that, he emphasized, the process was meant to belong to the people, not the state. Drawing from South Africa's turbulent past, Ramaphosa reminded lawmakers that many of the country's most historic processes of negotiation and reconciliation had faced boycotts, withdrawals, and criticism. He recalled the peace summits held during the darkest years of violence, when not all factions participated, yet the process still produced a peace pact that reduced bloodshed. He spoke of the Convention for a Democratic South Africa, which laid the foundation for a new era, even though many parties of weight refused to attend. He reminded the Chamber of CODESA and the multi-party negotiations, which also faced walkouts and refusals, yet still resulted in the constitution South Africa now proudly upholds. The lesson, Ramaphosa argued, is that the caravan always moves forward. There will always be detractors, skeptics, and those who refuse to take part. But the momentum of history cannot be halted by those who stand aside. The national dialogue, he said, would follow the same path. Even as some groups chose to withdraw, the process would not collapse. It would continue to move, and its doors would remain open to those who later chose to climb aboard. The president stressed that the dialogue is now in the hands of a steering committee, a body independent of government and inclusive of various representatives. He made it clear that he himself is no longer part of that committee. The government's role, he said, is simply to support logistically and financially while allowing the dialogue to grow organically, led by the people rather than by politicians. To reinforce its credibility, Ramaphosa pointed to the guiding principle of inclusivity. The steering committee, he said, has committed itself to ensuring that all sectors of South African society are represented. From grassroots organizations in rural villages to communities in urban centers, from sporting bodies to professional associations, from traditional leaders to educators, all will have a place at the table. Already, he explained, sectors are meeting to nominate representatives. Whether it is rugby or football, the medical fraternity or the legal profession, traditional councils or student bodies, each group is identifying delegates to ensure no voice is left unheard. The president went further, calling for the dialogue to extend to schools and universities. He envisioned national dialogue days in which young people could debate the South Africa they want to inherit. School governing bodies could hold their own sessions to deliberate on the education system they envision. Communities, civic organizations, and citizens at large could gather to craft their own solutions. This, he argued, is how inclusivity will be achieved, by making the dialogue bottom-up, people-driven, and rooted in the lived experiences of citizens rather than dictated from the top. For Ramaphosa, the point was clear. South Africa's history has always been shaped by those willing to take part, not by those who chose to walk away. The peace pacts, the democratic conventions, the multi-party negotiations, none of them were perfect, none were attended by everyone, yet all moved the country forward. The national dialogue will be no different. Whether critics believe it or not, whether institutions return or remain absent, the process will proceed. And when it does, the caravan will not stop. It will continue to move toward the goal of a more inclusive, more reconciled, and more democratic South Africa. The opposition, however, remained skeptical. They warned that without genuine buy-in from the full spectrum of society, the dialogue risked becoming another failed experiment, another top-down initiative cloaked in the language of inclusivity but hollow in practice. They questioned whether steering committees and working groups could truly capture the voices of ordinary citizens. For them, the absence of key foundations was not a minor setback but a fatal flaw, proof that the process lacked the legitimacy it needed to unite a fractured nation. Yet Ramaphosa held firm. He insisted that inclusivity is not about perfection but about persistence. There will always be doubters, but the majority, he believes, will take part. He expressed confidence that the dialogue, though contested, would ultimately lay the foundation for South Africans to speak freely about the nation they want to build together. And while critics dismissed the initiative as already doomed, Ramaphosa declared that the process is only just beginning, and its doors remain open. In the end, what unfolded in Parliament was more than a debate over procedure. It was a reminder of the delicate balance South Africa faces, between unity and division, between hope and skepticism, between the lessons of history and the uncertainties of the future. Whether the national dialogue becomes a turning point or another lost opportunity will depend not on politicians alone, but on the willingness of citizens, organizations, and communities to step forward and claim their place in shaping the country's destiny.